Hello, everyone, and welcome to TimeXtender Tuesdays. My name is Shivam Kapoor, and I'm the solution specialist here at TimeXtender. This is a two-part series of how you can connect to TimeXtender's REST API data source connector. Let's get into it. Now, let's look at the implementation step. The first thing we need to know is the REST API that we'll be using. So in this case, we'll be using the college football REST API. So the website that I got this from is api.collegefootballdata.com. And you can go ahead, if you're following this video, you can go ahead to get the REST API from there. Now comes how are we authenticating this REST API? So it is being done through a bearer token. You can go ahead and request a bearer token, which will be sent from the website to your email address that you have specified. The next thing is to know to log into TimeXtender portal, which is app.timextender.com. So herein, this is where you define your instances, your data sources as well, and which comes to our last part, which is to navigate to the data source connections and add in your new data source. So we will be taking TimeXtender's REST data connection and wherein we'll be entering our REST API URL, authenticating the REST API, and as well as mapping it into the ODX as well. So after this is complete, we will go to the TimeXtender desktop application, run a transfer task, synchronize, and bring in data into a modern data warehouse. Now this completes the steps. Now let's go ahead to the portal and see how we can quickly do it. I've successfully logged on to our web portal, which is app.timextender.com. And now I will go ahead in my data source connections right here. And this is where it will list all your data sources. So for this, I'm going to add in a new data source. And here under type, I'm going to search for REST. And we'll choose TimeXtender REST. Here, I'm going to give it a name, football API. And coming down, this is where I will be defining my connection string. So I'm going to be deleting my name right here and adding my base URL. This is my base URL, which was api.collegefootball.com. Now going down to authentication. So for this particular REST API, the authentication type is a bearer token. And now I'm going to be adding my bearer token right here. And this is my bearer token. Now moving on to our advanced features right here. Here in the same REST API connector, you can add in your headers, your pagination, you can enable them. You don't have to go and change anything in the RST file. With this REST connector, you are not generating any RST file. TimeXtender REST API connector takes care of it for you. And now we're going to be starting with endpoints. So the first endpoint that we're going to be defining is called teams. And we're going to click on add endpoint. So an endpoint is basically what follows after like your slash base URL. So here I'm going to be getting my conference teams. And we're going to be adding query parameters right here. And the first one is conference, because this is a conference endpoint and I want to know what conferences to put. So for US college football, there are SEC, you have your Big Ten, your Pac-12, your Mountain. So there are different conferences. For this particular endpoint, we are pulling only Big Ten. Now, once this is done, we can also add in additional endpoint. So with TimeXtender's REST API, with one connection, you can have one base URL and multiple different endpoints, all in one single connector. So for this one, I'm going to give it roster and add that endpoint, and description is roster info, and add in my query parameters. So the first one is team. What team do I want to pull it for? So the first one is Michigan. I'm going to add in another parameter, which is year. So for which year I want the roster information. Once this is done, we are all good and ready to go. So for future, In the next part of the series here, you'll learn more about table flattening, pagination, and all those advanced features. So keep an eye on that. One quick thing I want to point out is that you can also make it is sensitive. You can check mark this if the query parameters are sensitive um, to case or not. The next thing is we need to map it to our ODX. So here I'm going to map it to my ODX and just click add. Now the data source connection is completed. Now we'll go to our desktop application and run a synchronize and a transfer task and bring the data into our MDW. Let's jump into it. Now, as you can see here, our football API data source that we just added is already available in our data source. Now we're going to go ahead and synchronize. And after that, we're going to do a full load. As you can see here now, you don't need to generate an RST or make changes to the RST, whether it's related to query parameters or paginations. Everything is all taken care of by TimeXtender. And for those kind of features, tune in ahead for the next part of the video. As the synchronize runs and the load runs, we'll wait and see. Now our synchronize has completed and we are running a full load. Now it has successfully completed our transfer task, and now we're going to go ahead and select table. Now we're going to test our football API and see what all it brings. As you can see here, it brings you your teams, which is under underscore TX underscore root, and your roster. As you can see here, location and logos. So these are structures based on the JSON response that you get. And based on your JSON response, TimeXtender's REST API connector will convert that JSON into an XML, and underscore TX underscore root will determine whether there is any data in it or it creates another tables for you that is based on the structure of the JSON. So now let's go ahead and bring our TX underscore root teams and rosters to our tables right here, as you can see here. Now we're going to go ahead and do a deploy and execute right here. As you can see here, it's doing a deploy and execute and all the tasks that it is running. Is completed. Now let's go ahead and do a preview table right here. You can see we have gotten our roster, which was one endpoint, and teams was a different endpoint on the same base URL. So one base URL and two different endpoints. We are all putting it into one data source connector. So that we have it all right here. So now this completes our video. Thank you for tuning in and stay tuned for the next part of the TimeXtender REST Data Source Connector series. Till then, see you next time. Bye.